Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Alrighty, welcome to the 168th edition of the MMA Circus here on BloodyElbow.com and live on YouTube. My name is Nick Baldwin. He is Wes Riddle, our guest co-host this week of MMACircus.com. As always, we are your hosts. I shouldn't say as always, but hey, you've done it before and you're back. Wes, thank you so much for taking the time.
So I've kind of had to take a break from social media, been doing a lot of stuff for MMA Circus and podcasts and different stuff like that. But now I've kind of got my energy back to kind of do stuff like this again. And I feel like now's a good time because I think having stuff to do takes your mind off things a little bit, especially when you're talking about things that you like. And also doing it with you, Nick, because I know we've known each other for years and you're a really good friend. So I'm doing a lot better. I'm enjoying kind of this week. And I guess we got this fight card coming up, and we had Contender Series last night, which we'll break down a little bit today.
Well, it's good to hear you're doing better. Obviously, I'm sure it was. I mean, you can't even say like anything I say is an understatement of how difficult it would be to go through. But glad you were able to take a couple weeks off and just sit back and reflect on what happened. And of course, I'm very sorry to hear about what did happen about the passing of your dad. And yeah, it's great to talk to you again. It's been a while, so I'm glad you're in somewhat better spirits, and I'm sure things will keep getting better. So thanks again for doing this. We appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to, and I know Jed is doing Before the Battle tomorrow night. So we will do that very soon. But for now, we got the MMA Circus to record and do for our many, many fans. That is heavy sarcasm. But nonetheless, for the few that are listening, let's go back to this past Tuesday. Yesterday night, if you are listening on this Wednesday, we had the Week 2 Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series. We had 5 fights, 5 finishes, and what a card this was. I mean, I'm not super dedicated when it comes to Contender Series. I try to watch as much as I can. I remember last summer, I watched, I think, the majority of them. I think maybe 5 to 6 of the 8 weeks, and so far, I'm 2 for 2 for this season. So far, so good. This card was a lot of fun. We had Matt Salis versus Yazan Hajay in the main event. It was a featherweight fight. It was, of course, the American Matt Salis getting the win via TKO in the first round. 4 contracts were given out. That is something we've never seen in the history of this show, of this series, which is aired at the Tough Gym in Las Vegas, Nevada. 4 contracts, 4 new UFC fighters yesterday, Tuesday evening, were handed out by, of course, the UFC president Dana White, as well as the 2 promotion matchmakers, Sean Shelby and Mick Maynard. Before we had seen 3 contracts given out in one night, but not 4, and I think that just speaks volumes about how good this card was. I guess as far as the main event goes, first, I might as well run down real quick who got the contract. So it was 4 of 5 winners, of course: Matt Salis, Anthony Hernandez, Ryan Spann, and Dwight Grant. The only winner that didn't get a contract was Austin Springer, who defeated Giga Chikadze in the third last fight. Sucks for him to be left in the room all alone, but hey, what you gonna do? Still, I mean, I'm happy that they handed out 4 contracts because I think the 4 that got the UFC deals deserve them. And we saw in week 1, Chris Curtis didn't get a contract, and he really should have. He deserved it. He showed a great game, very well rounded, and so maybe this was Dana White seeing the backlash for not signing Curtis and sort of giving us one that honestly we maybe don't deserve. But nonetheless, great card. I'm happy. I think Dana White got it right. What did you make of the card? And I guess we'll sort of start with the main event as well.
I've really liked the idea of Dana White's Contender Series. I remember when it started last year, I was such a big fan of the concept because it gives, first off, Fight Pass a little bit of a boost overall, and then also it gives somebody and all of us pretty much something to do on a Tuesday night, which is in like the beginning of the week, almost the middle of the week. So it kind of just gives somebody and everybody something to do during the work week, or just be able to enjoy some fights. But when it comes to this card specifically, I really enjoyed it. You mentioned about Austin Springer. That has to be such a terrible feeling to be the only person left in the room and not get a contract. And I saw John Morgan posted a picture of that, and I felt so bad for him just because he's sitting there like on the desk on his phone. And it's like that has to be one of the worst feelings. But then again, he still had a pretty impressive performance because
he didn't even look bad. He didn't even look bad. It was just everyone else looked even better.
And if you think about it too, looking at all the names, he was the only underdog on the card to win, and he beat Giga and submitted him. And of course, Giga had an incredible kickboxing resume, and he was able to basically break him down with the takedowns, land a little bit of ground and pound, ended up getting the submission. But he was the only underdog to win. Maybe in that case, they'll bring him back in a future episode, but and have one more fight. But then again, the other four that they signed were really, really good. I think I was most impressed with Anthony Hernandez. He ended up getting a pretty quick knockout. He co-main event when he fought Jordan Wright. And Jordan Wright, I mean, he was undefeated, had all first round finishes, but the names he had weren't really the best victories. Hernandez was able to capitalize on that, get a victory, stay undefeated, now 7-0. He also has a win over Brendan Allen, who's really popular over in, I think, LFA. And Brendan Allen's a really tough guy. So Hernandez had a good performance. And then Matt Salis, of course, in the main event, he was able to get a really good technical knockout there. He was able to drop him early and land some good ground and pound. So, and then we got Ryan Spann further down the card. He was able to get that guillotine choke, avenging his loss. The first one he had was to Carl Roberson back last season, actually in 2017. And Roberson's put together, I think, like a 2-1 or 3-1 record. Lost his last fight, but Spann was able to avenge that loss after getting a few victories in a row, and then he was able to get this quick guillotine choke finish. And then Dwight Grant, of course, got that really brutal knockout in the opening fight over Tyler Hill after a pretty back and forth fight, but was able to capitalize there on that knockout. So I think the card was really good. I think this was one of the best Contender Series cards that we've seen. The 4 contracts, I was kind of shocked that they were going to do that. I thought 2 or 3 would be the max, but I guess there really is no max, and I don't think there's a minimum either. So they could choose to give 0 contracts, or maybe they could choose to give 5. This one they gave 4, and maybe we'll see another 4-1 in the future.
Well, I mean, something I remember saying last season was every winner should get a contract because it basically, I mean, the way I look at Tuesday Night Contender Series and the way I think most people look at Tuesday Night Contender Series is a trial entering the UFC. If you win this fight, you should be considered UFC caliber. You're that good. You're ready for the big leagues. You lose, well, you came close. It's like it's above any regional promotion, but below the UFC. That's kind of how I look at it. It's that it's a transition period. It's, are you ready for the next jump up, for the next step? Yes or no. If you win, you should be. If you lose, you shouldn't be. So I stand by that. I mean, Austin Springer, give him a UFC contract. I'm not opposed to it. I think he looked good beating a glory kickboxer who obviously has a lot of stand-up skills, definitely flawed on the ground. We saw that in that fight. But hey, Springer showed a gunsy performance. He was arguably down going into that 3rd round. But hey, he looked good on the ground and ended up getting that 3rd round submission. Very good performance, but wasn't enough. But again, I wouldn't mind if they give all 5 winners because, hey, I mean, I know at the same time I've been calling, hey, let's cut down the UFC roster a little bit. So maybe it's me being hypocritical, but I just don't like when guys sort of get screwed a little bit, kind of like Chris Curtis did last week and arguably Montel Jackson as well, just because, you put on a great performance and it's in the hands of Dana White. And I like when things are a bit more objective. I mean, Dana White likes 1st round finishes. He likes when guys win in 8 seconds and show, other than one flying knee or one punch, no other skills, no cardio, no nothing, no wrestling, defense, anything. Dana White likes that stuff, and so instant sign, kind of like Alonzo Menifield. And that's no knock on Alonzo Menifield. He's a great fighter, and I can't wait to see him in the UFC. But an 8-second KO, we don't learn tons from that. And so, or even signing Greg Hardy, who knocked out his opponent in 53 seconds or whatever it is. And so Dana White likes that sort of stuff. He likes quick finishes, but it's ultimately subjective. I would prefer if it was more objective, but hey, it is what it is. I think the UFC president did make the right call by signing at least 4 guys here. I was most impressed with Matt Salis. I know not many people are saying that. I know Anthony Hernandez has been getting a lot of love, and his knockout stood out to me big time as well. I mean, as you said, Ryan Spann looked good. Grant looked fantastic as well. But something about Salis, I think he was just so calm. He looked like a veteran, even though he was 6-1 or 7 or 5-1 or 6-1 going in. He looked like a veteran. He looked very calm. He was laid back. He was relaxed. He didn't look like he was in his biggest fight of his career, with a lot of nerves and all of that a lot of fighters and newbies, so to speak, go through. So I was very impressed with his performance. I don't know much about his opponent Yazan. I don't know what his skill level is like, or his opponent caliber, and who he's fought, who he hasn't. He's undefeated going into this fight, so says something at the very least. And Salis was able to put him away real quick with strikes in the first round. Ground and pound looked really good. He looked just like a solid fighter. I know their styles aren't, identical, and I know they're a bit different, but I don't know exactly why. Perhaps it's their body type and build. He reminded me a lot of Jimmy Rivera. I don't know if you got that idea. I didn't really see anybody mention it, but I don't know why exactly. It was just their build, the way they fight a little bit. And again, will this be a top contender of the featherweight division? I don't know. 145 is stacked, but I think Matt Salis is a good addition. So I was very impressed with Matt Salis. I mean, this is a guy I had never heard of before this fight, and so I think he definitely rose his stock, and just like all the other winners last night. Let's move on to the co-main event. You have, of course, already touched on it. Anthony Fluffy Hernandez, the LFA middleweight champion, getting it done against the Beverly Hills Ninja, Jordan Wright. A lot of people have been talking about Jordan Wright, just talking about his opponent caliber and who he's fought, who he's beat. He was 9-0. Now, I have not confirmed that myself. I know I probably could real quick. I haven't, so take it for what it's worth. But the fact of the matter is that Jordan Wright just hasn't fought that many great fighters. Anthony Hernandez is not that. Or he is that, I mean. He's a very good fighter, very talented. He's on the come-up. He's young. He's hungry, undefeated. A lot of experience on bigger stages, fighting for the LFA title and winning it against Brendan Allen, as you said. This was no match for Hernandez. I mean, he put Jordan Wright away real quick. Strikes. This guy looked really good. I mean, he's getting better. And he lost his father going into this fight as well just a couple months ago. And so I assume that probably gave him some extra motivation. I was super impressed with Hernandez, and I know you already mentioned it. You were as well.
Yeah, I was really impressed with that performance. I think he went in there, did exactly what he needed to do. Now he's, of course, still undefeated as a professional. He has one loss to Justin Jones, who's a pretty notable guy. But that was back in his amateur days. Now he has basically finished every single opponent except his last one, which he beat Brendan Allen. Brendan Allen is a pretty talented fighter. I think he's only got like 2 losses. This one was really well done. And then Chaz Skelly was the one that sent that tweet. I saw the exact same one you're talking about. Jordan Wright, he has one victory of a fighter that was 7-3. Then again, that doesn't really mean a whole lot, and that was in an LFA card. Everybody else, I see the 0-21 fighter. I see the 0-10 fighter. I see an 0-5 fighter, and then I see everybody else is almost basically 0-0. So he has wins over 2 fighters. This is Jordan Wright that had 1 win or more, and the other fighter that had more had 7 wins. So
wow.
Fighter that had more had 7 wins. So
wow.
maybe Jordan Wright just wasn't really ready for this competition. I feel like it's one thing to be able to go in there and get a quick finish against somebody that has a decent record versus somebody that gets a quick finish over a fighter that doesn't have any experience. And for Jordan Wright's side, of course, that just maybe he wasn't really ready. I guess he just didn't really fight anybody notable. Hernandez tagged them the first couple times. I felt like Wright didn't really know what to do there in the pocket there against the cage. Vision.
I think this guy can go far. And I guess on the note of Jordan Wright, I saw a lot of comments after the fight and maybe even going in that, hey, this guy's not a real fighter. He should hang him up. And I'm not here to say that. I mean, he can do what he wants. I mean, at the end of the day, he did beat 9 fighters. He did beat 9 people in a cage. And so, yeah, that counts for something. I don't know how much, just considering the fighters he's faced leading up to this Contender Series shot, but he was good enough to beat somebody, so I guess keep at it. I mean, I don't know how far Jordan Wright can go. I mean, I agree. He looked a bit uncomfortable sometimes. I mean, as far as I know, it seems like a lot of this fighting stuff comes naturally. You either have it or you don't. Of course, you can get better skill-wise and everything else, but there's some natural talent there that you're just born with, essentially, and Was Jordan Wright born with it? I don't know. It seemed time just be in the octagon, but I am very interested to see who they pair up against him, how quickly they look to push him, and do they push him? Do they look at this guy as a potential, not a star per se, but just a guy that can make some waves? I think they should. He has a good story, and so I like everything I see in Fluffy. That is for sure. Let's just talk about like the last couple fights, sort of together. Give our last few thoughts on them. Ryan Spann, of course, picked up a big win over Emiliano Sordi. This guy looked great. I mean, they were talking tons about redemption, and it was a cool moment just because he, of course, got knocked out on Contender Series last season by Carl Robertson very quickly in the first round. It was like an 8-second flying knee KO, something like that. And he certainly wasn't able to show the true Ryan Spann. Since then, he's been back in the winning column, winning fights for LFA, and now he's here and got signed to the UFC. It was a quick submission. It was he almost pushed Sordi. I mean, Sordi was definitely hurt, but it wasn't a massive knockdown. I don't think. That's sort of how I saw it anyways. It certainly wasn't a slip. I think a few people were saying that, or maybe Sordi did himself. It certainly wasn't I slipped on the canvas, I fell over. I mean, he definitely got pushed over at the very least. And Spann was able to hop on a guillotine quick in the first round. I was impressed with that. And of course, kicking things off, we had Dwight Grant, who knocked out Tyler Hill, the zombie, guy that apparently has a great chin, but still couldn't take the punishment from the body snatcher. Dwight Grant looked great. Quick knockout. Not much more to say about that. But, again, Matt Staley's, Anthony Hernandez, Ryan Spann, and Dwight Grant all in the UFC, and can't agree with that more. What did you make of Spann and Grant's performances?
I was really glad to see Ryan Spann get one, especially after that Carl Roberson loss back last year, and he was able to win 3 fights before this one. The last fight coming to Alex Nick flows to it. It was too, but Grant was able to get the knockout, which was absolutely brutal. One of the more
Marquez 1-0.
Julian Marquez had that crazy fight of the night with Darren Stewart. Just a lot of really talented fighters that came from the first season. So that makes me have a lot of confidence in some of these fighters. Now, I don't really want it to get to the point where I know you want to see almost every fighter signed, but if they were to keep signing all these fighters, some
it's
of them
a little much because they do have 8 weeks. So I understand it.
8 weeks, that would be 40 fighters signed. I feel like it's just quite a bit, and maybe there's some fighters who have really impressive careers outside of just being prospects that they want to put in Contender Series that should be signed over some of these guys. So I feel like that would be a lot, but I'm hoping that these 4 that they sign on this last card are actually going to show up and put on some good performances because I have a lot of confidence in them. Wish Chris Curtis was still in there, but I'm not going to complain about it anymore. I feel like we've all kind of complained enough about that. But overall, these 4 signings look pretty good, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do here in 2018 and 2019, these next 2 years.
So just to go through the 4 new UFC fighters, and do you see, I mean, you can pick 1 or 2, it doesn't really matter. Who do you see having the most success in the UFC?
Man, that's a really tough question.
If you want me to answer first, I can go for that.
I'll let you answer first.
Sure.
I'll need to think about it because that's actually really tough.
Now, this is probably the easy way out. I'm going to go with the main and co-main event winners, Matt Staley's and Anthony Hernandez, and I suspect that's probably the route you'll take as well, but perhaps you'll prove me wrong. The thing with Ryan Spann and Dwight Grant, I think both guys will do well. Ryan Spann is a 205er, and I have little faith in most 205 prospects just because they seem to do so well, and then they end up falling short, and there's just not many guys that really are the next big deal. Look at someone like a Jared Cannonier. I thought he'd go really far, especially after beating Ian Kudilava, but he's coming off a couple straight losses. Tyson Pedro thought he would go really far, and he still has a chance. He does fight OSP this week, and that'd be a big win for him, but he also did lose to Leo Latifi, so that's a setback there. Dominic Reyes is sort of the one guy emerging from the other prospects, from all the other prospects, as the next big thing. That's, of course, after someone like Amisha Serkinov fell short, after Krylov was gone, all of that. This guy already has 5 losses in his pro career. He's definitely beatable. I just, right now, see Ryan Spann being a next contender, but I think he can still add some fun to the 205 division. Similar things with Dwight Grant. I don't know enough about him to really make a great judgment, but my initial reaction is his defense not great enough. Just in general, he seems like an action-packed fighter. He seems like he'll be a lot of fun to watch, and I'm sure he'll add some entertainment to the welterweight division. But I'm not sure he'll ever be a contender. Whereas on the other hand, I mean, Matt Saley's what I saw from him. Again, I don't need to really exactly repeat what I said, but just his calmness. I think the way he put his strikes together, his pound, the way he got Yazan down, I think he looked really good. I think he can be not a contender necessarily, but I think he can make some waves legitimately. And I think Anthony Hernandez along the same lines as well at middleweight. I think with his power, his submission game is really good as well. His wrestling's decent. This guy's well rounded. He's hungry again, and he has finishing power, as I said. So I think this guy can go pretty far too. So if I'm going to pick two of the four, it's definitely Saley's and Hernandez.
I think I'm going to agree with you on that one. The thing about Ryan Spann is that we've seen him lose fights to fighters that are right there around where they're just average, decent, not top 10 worthy fighters. We've seen him lose to those guys. As I mentioned, Leo Lete was one. Carl Roberson was another. Robert Drysdale was another. So kind of those guys that are right there in the middle. Seeing that he's lost to them, and I know he's on this win streak now. I mean, I feel like that's going to be the area where he'll probably hover in the UFC, kind of like a Tyson Pedro or maybe a little bit lower, just kind of around that area. That's kind of how I feel, like Sam Alvey, just in that general area. We'll have to see what he can do, but I agree with you about the Ryan Spann concept. And then I guess looking at the other fight, Saley's and Anthony Hernandez, I feel like there is some room right now in the featherweight division to where he can make some action. Because I feel like sometimes the featherweights just they'll win some and lose some pretty frequently depending on who they are. There hasn't been a lot of consistency there in that weight class, so maybe he could definitely sneak his way up there with this pretty well-rounded game. And then the same kind of goes with the middleweight division. Right now, I feel like middleweight, you've got like the top 5 or 6 guys, and then I feel like it just branches off so heavily, and there's not really a whole lot of guys that can really burst up there and get past. Like we saw Thiago Santos thought he was going to be David back to where he was before. All going to be guys that could possibly make moves, kind of like you. We'll just kind of have to see how they evolve and see how they do in later rounds, because we haven't seen a whole lot from either one of them. And I know you hinted on that earlier, how sometimes we don't really see a full game plan. Dana likes to sign those fighters who get quick finishes and not really like a Chris Curtis see his whole game plan and see how he evolves as the fight goes on and see how his conditioning holds up and see how his striking compared from the first to the third round. We haven't really seen that from either of these two. So
and we also have to see how they do against UFC competition.
Exactly.
Their next fights are going to be the biggest fights and the toughest fights, and some guys fall short. We think they're so good, and they're just not quite ready. So it's going to be interesting to see where a guy like Matt Saley's or a guy like Anthony Hernandez fits in the division. I mean, gun to my head, I think they'll do well, but crazier things have happened. So we will see.
And then I'll just handle one more thing. I know Hernandez has been like 5 rounds before. He in that Brennan Allen fight, which is for the vacant middleweight title in LFA, and he was able to get it. So he has been 5 rounds before. But then again, it's a toss-up, kind of like what you said. Going up against UFC competition, this is going to be a completely different ball game for both of these fighters, all 4 of these fighters, and we'll have to see kind of where they pair up in these next few months and the next couple of years.
All right, let's move on to this weekend's card. Saturday morning, if you live in North America, and I guess it would be Saturday evening if you live in Singapore. We got UFC Fight Night in Singapore. Donald Cowboy Cerrone faces Leon Rocky Edwards in a fairly important welterweight fight. Not, division changing perhaps, but number 11 versus number 13, still noteworthy at the very least. And it's a pretty interesting matchup. I'm looking forward to it. The fact that the main card starts at 7 a.m. in the morning my time and the prelims at 3:30 a.m., and I know an hour later where you are, doesn't exactly help. The fact that I'll be camping during this card and will probably wake up naturally and catch the last couple fights. I'm not actually going to complain about it because this card is nothing fantastic. there's a few things that do stand out. I'll talk about that, but otherwise, it's kind of just another UFC Fight Pass card. It's another one of those. Hey, we have 500 some fighters on the roster. We need to give them all 2 or 3 fights a year. This is just sort of, you know, yeah, giving us that chance to complete their contract and all of that. I mean, this isn't a very good card. Do you agree, or am I not onto something here? Am I missed something?
It's just not that special. I mean, the main card is pretty decent. I feel like it's always a good card when you have the leech because, of course, he's going to open up the main card, which is not really a main card because it's on a fight pass. But
Main card's
whatever.
not great, or I mean, it's not terrible, but it's only 4 fights, so keep
Yeah,
that in mind as well. If this was a typical, I mean, most FS1 cards, main cards are 6 fights, so you throw the last couple prelims on there. I mean, is that a great 6 fight main card? Not really.
yeah, and the fact,
Not to be Debbie Downer, but
right, and it just kind of stinks too because when you look at the card, it's like, wow, we don't have another card until after this, until July 6th. You'll be there for those. And then if you look beforehand, we didn't have a card for 2 weeks. So the one UFC card in the middle that separates like a month of no UFC is one of like just not really a well named card really in the morning or early in the morning. So nobody in North America or South America, unless you're going to be really dedicated or work for an MMA media site, are going to get up and watch this card or if you're dedicated to the sport. So it's kind of stinks because it's like, wow, we got Contender Series and this card, and that's what's keeping us from UFC 225 to International Fight Week. So
it is what it is, though. I mean, again, we are also the people, or at least some of us are the people that complain about the many cards, and this is just an example of it. Again, not to keep talking about how terrible these cards are, but it's kind of a problem. I mean, yes, we're talking about how many cards there are, and the fact that there's only one fight night separating 225 and the major 226 weekend, International Fight Week. Don't forget the tough finale, of course. It's not a bad thing. I'm glad that there's only one card, but I mean, if there's going to be a card, make it decent. I mean, just throw this away and I'm happier almost because, I mean, yeah, there's less cards and they're still not great. So that just means it's still oversaturated. That's my take. But nonetheless, let's stay positive. Let's talk about Donald Cerrone and Leon Edwards. It's a good fight. I mean, the fact that Cerrone, his better days are behind him doesn't help that it is. It's a good main event. It's fine. I'll take it. The co-main event is actually a lot of fun. I like it. Vincent Prue versus Tyson Pedro, as I mentioned earlier on. That's a good 205-pound fight. I mean, it's number 7 versus number 13. The winner will be right up there with the best of the best at light heavyweight, right under the top 5 most likely. It's a good chance for Tyson Pedro to rebound. I believe he is coming off a win since the Latifi loss, but nonetheless, this would be by far the biggest win of his career. While on the other hand, St. Preux is coming off a loss to Latifi himself. And so if he loses this, then that's kind of the days of OSP being a contender are over, I would think. But still a fight, and that's fairly meaningful for the lacking 205-pound division. What stands out to you on this card the most? It doesn't have to be in the main event, doesn't have to be the co-main, could be the somewhere down in the prelims. Is there anything that really stands out before we give our predictions for the last few fights?
not a whole lot. I mean, the main event, you're not going to really gain a lot of Cerrone wins because like a lot of people already expect him to win. But I feel like you will gain a little bit more with Leon Edwards getting a victory, just because he's this guy who's running a pretty impressive win streak, hasn't lost since Kamaru Usman, and his wins look pretty impressive each time. So I feel like the main event it's decent. It could be pretty fun, but for the most part, I don't know if I'm going to get a whole lot from it learning about either fighter because Cerrone is going to still be the same Cerrone. I don't think there's really any improvements he needs to make. He's just going to keep fighting his own style right now. Tyson Pedro, and then if OSP gets a victory, if he gets another step up and loses, it's like, man, we're kind of in the same place. But I feel like this is going to be a really important fight for both of them. Um, Besides that, I mentioned the Leech. He's always fun to watch. We've got Jessica Rose Clark, who's still undefeated in the UFC, and she's put together a pretty impressive streak now, 3 wins in a row. And then just looking down, you've got some names, which we talked about. Pacharyan, he's making his debut in the UFC, which is going to be pretty fun to see. Finally, like an actual bantamweight that has a lot of just a lot of caliber. We've talked about him, or maybe not you and I, but I've seen a lot of different people talk about him outside. I've seen a few of his fights outside of the UFC. He definitely could bring some stuff for this card. So I don't want to keep talking too much about it. The card's whatever. Then you've got, of course, some fighters that are from, I guess, Singapore and around that area. So maybe the card will be okay because I feel like some of the international cards sometimes turn out all right, no matter what the name value is. But then again,
On
I
paper,
don't really know.
it's not good. And so, I mean, people all the time say, but these are the cards that end up being great. But sometimes they are. Sometimes you have a card not great on paper that ends up being very fun and you look like a genius. But more often than not, then they just aren't that great. And so I don't like that argument. People trying to back the UFC or back up the UFC, I should say. I mean, if it's not a good card on paper, I'm fine with saying it. And so that's sort of that. As far as stands out to me, I think the fight that stands out the most, the one I'm looking forward to. I mean, maybe not the most because I do like the name value. I mean, Cowboy is always fun, but as far as a fight to watch and keep your eyes out for, as you said, Peter Yan versus Teruto Ishihara, that's a great fight at Ban. And yeah, I mean, Peter Yan coming over from ACB, he was, I believe, the champ there, right?
He
And
was, yep.
yeah, and this guy I haven't seen fight nearly as much as I should. I haven't gone back and done my homework and watched all of 9 pro fights or anything like that, but this guy's a lot of fun. Teruto Ishihara, I mean, this is a guy who had a lot of potential, but he has never really come through. Training at Team Alpha Male has definitely helped him, but not sure this guy will ever be a contender. He's action packed. He'll swing. He'll take guys down. He's a lot of, he's entertaining for if anything else. And so I think he's a great matchup for Peter Yan just because he's going to bring it. He's not going to sit back and wait for Yan to move forward and be the aggressor and favorite betting wise for good reason. I think Peter Yan gets the job done, but I think matchup wise it's a lot of fun, and I think the UFC knows what they're doing when they put it in their featured prelim spot. I think considering it's all on Fight Pass, throw that in the main, or not the main event, but the opening fight on the main card. I think that would have been a good option as well. Something I found, just sort of on the topic of bout order, it's funny that Jake Matthews, who defeated Li Jingliang in his last fight, is in the middle of the prelims against Shinsho Anzai, while Jingliang is kicking off the main card. But that's just one of my useless observations. Let's talk about the main event a bit more, or a bit deeper, I guess. Donald Cerrone, Leon Edwards, 170 pounds. This is sort of the veteran versus the prospect. Cerrone is 33, 10-1, no contest. He's been around forever. Leon Edwards, a lot less experience. He's 14-3, but still has been around in the UFC for a few years now. Could this be the passing of the torch? Could this be Donald Cerrone? My better days are behind me. I'm still a fun fighter, but I'm never going to be a contender, while Leon Edwards finally makes that big jump forward. Is that this fight, do you think?
Man, I think there's a decent chance. But I'm really pretty well-rounded stand-up game, and then of course is effective with takedowns and effective with his ground and pound, which we saw implemented really well in the Peter Sabata fight. But going against a guy like Donald Cerrone, and I mentioned this a little earlier, Cerrone's not really going to do, I feel like, a whole lot different than what we've seen. I feel like he's at a point to where there's not really room for improvement because he likes to implement his kind of takedowns and a different kind of striking game. So it's been a close fight for me in making a decision. I haven't really made up my mind yet. I think I want to go Leon Edwards, but right now I still have Donald Cerrone. He was my initial pick, and I had him picked by a third round or fourth round TKO. Thinking that maybe if Edwards can't get Cerrone down, Cerrone will just have the better conditioning throughout the 5 rounds in this case, just to wear Edwards down later in the fight. We've seen Edwards drop before, and the Barberena fight was a big one. But then we've seen him fight guys like Albert Tumenov and Vicente Luque, and he held his own and ended up getting the victories in both of those over 2 really tough and heavy hitters. So Cerrone is my pick now. Could change it, but it should be a pretty decent fight for a 5-round period of time.
It's a really tough fight to call. But I got to go with Rocky. I got to go with the rising star here. I got to go with the guy with the momentum, the guy with just with the potential. I mean, Donald Cerrone, I've said it already. I probably don't need to say it again, but I will. I mean, his better days are behind him. Leon Edward is getting better. He is full of confidence, perhaps even cockiness, and maybe that's a bad thing. Maybe this is Leon Edwards shining in his first main event, but shining too much, thinking it's too good, and then falling short against the veteran. Donald Cerrone, I mean, that veteran savvy can come into play here. It really could. I won't be shocked if at all if Cerrone gets it done, but he just is getting a bit sloppy as time goes on, and that's expected as you get older, take more damage. I don't think the knockout to Darren Till helped matters whatsoever. He looked decent against Yancy Medeiros. I don't think the win was super impressive. I mean, knocking out Yancy definitely is impressive, a good win on your record, but like a Kamaru Usman, but no shame in losing to Usman. That was way back in 2015 or 2016 as well. Could be a different fight now, but ultimately, Leon Edwards, he just has more ways to win. Cerrone is a scrappy guy. He comes to bring it, and he comes to fight. But I just feel Edwards, his ground game's better. I think his wrestling's pretty good. We saw that in his last fight against Peter Sabata. On the feet, it's a close fight. Cerrone has a lot of good leg kicks. Edwards, his striking's pretty good, just well-rounded wise. His boxing's not bad. He has power, and I think he might clip Cerrone. I think on the feet it's a close one. On the ground, so if I'm going to say how the fight's going to play out, I think Edwards will be able to get Cerrone down a couple times. Cerrone's pretty good off his back, but not sure how much he'll be able to get done. And then on the feet, I think Cerrone will land some good load on Cerrone in round number 4. Maybe I'll change my mind, but I think I'm going to stick with Edwards. It just comes down to how. If it goes to the distance, I won't be shocked. Edwards, he's a finisher, but he has gone to decision a few times as well. I am interested to see how he does 5 rounds. He's never gone 5 rounds in the UFC before, probably ever. And I know he slowed down a little bit in the past. Hopefully he does get that in check and is able to go 5 rounds with relative ease. I expect that'll be the case, but you never know. Worth mentioning. But I got to go Leon Edwards. He's the rising guy. He has the potential. And I got to go with Rocky with the TKO in round number 4. As far as the co-main event goes, I won't take as much time. I'm probably going to go OSP here. I just think he has a few more ways to win. I've been impressed with Tyson Pedro, but I just think St. Prue's, his striking's a little better. The wrestling's close. I mean, they're both big guys. OSP is slightly bigger, reach-wise, pretty much dead even. It's a tough fight to call, and I guess the other fights, Jing Liang's probably going to win. I'll probably go Jessica Rose Clark against Jessica I, and then otherwise, I don't really care after that.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I agree with you. I feel like just the early prelims are not really spectacular. At least on paper, they definitely could put on a good showing, but we'll have to wait until Saturday morning to figure that out. I'm actually thinking about taking Tyson Pedro, and the reason primarily because I mean I love OSP, and I think I probably told you that I've always been pretty high on him, but I just don't know how his chin's going to be able to handle in this fight. It felt like Ilir Latifi was able to rock him pretty quickly and easily. And I kind of fear that against a guy like Tyson Pedro, who still packs a lot of power. Plus, I feel like Pedro is going to have a little bit more support here since he is a little bit closer to his hometown. But then again, OSP fought, I feel like Ryan Bader here. I could be 100% wrong. I'm actually trying to check where this card was. No, for some reason I thought he fought Ron Bader here. I thought he had a fight over here at one point, but I guess I could be wrong. But I don't know. I I just feel like taking Tyson Pedro. I think he's the younger guy. I trust his chin a little more, saying that he lasted to a decision compared to a knockout victory for Ilir Latifi. Over Ilir knocked out Oven St. Preux. Ilir went to a decision with Pedro, and Pedro I thought won around him there. So close fight. Not really sure on it, but I think I might take Pedro. I've got Jesse Rose Clark too in a not spectacular really fight. There's not a whole lot there. Since seeing that Jessica Oz lost so many in a row, and then she won her last fight, but barely. You've got the Leech, which I'd assume he'll be able to beat Daichi Abe or Abe, however you say his name. But Abe is a pretty tough guy. And then again, like you said, beyond that, if it's not Petrolian, you've got Jake Matthews, Shinzo Anzai, which could be pretty fun. But there's just not. And then I guess we talked about it all fair. Yadong Song and Kanan Song, two guys that both got pretty quick finishes in their last fight, both of them, and they were on the Brisbane Gastelum card in China, wherever it was, together. Those two both look pretty impressive, so maybe they can put on some impressive performances here on Saturday morning.
Fighting, he says there's one thing for sure, and he is not done, and he is not done fighting. I butchered that, but you get the point. Does Jake Ellenberger get it or not get it for apparently not firing just yet?
Man, I remember when I first started watching MMA, Jake Ellenberger was one of the first guys that I saw and became a pretty big fan of his. But now just seeing where he is, I just don't feel like it's healthy at this point in his career. And I know he didn't get knocked out in the face, as in the brain, his last fight. But when you get knocked out by a knee to the body, which I know Ben Saunders has some killer Muay Thai, it's just that just in my mind thinks that your body just can't take it. Like your actual physical body, not even your brain, but your physical body just doesn't have it left in you to be able to continue like that. Seeing how he's lost actually, I'm trying to look at it real quick. 4 out of his last 5 losses were by knockout. And then you go further back, he's only won 2 fights in his last 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 fights. So he's 2-8. I just really think that this is a good point to where you need to sit back and understand and give more consideration to your health rather than give consideration to just having this will to fight. Because I feel like, of course, we're not fighters and we don't know how they feel and we don't really know what they want to do. And of course, they really want to be able to continue fighting. We see like Chuck Liddell wanting to come back, but I just feel like they need somebody that's close to them to tell them, hey, like you should not be going back because you've been knocked out so many times. You need to take care of your health. And that's kind of where I wish the fans would up a little bit more to be impacted if he fights about him.
Yeah, I don't like. Jake Ellenberger, his better days are clearly, obviously, without a doubt behind him. He's not going to win fights against most UFC fighters in the welterweight division. It's hard to, okay, so you say, like, we're not going to do this, but look at the UFC welterweight division. UFC.com, just go to their fighter list. There's not that many you'd pick against or pick to beat. I mean, maybe there's a few because Ellenberger can still crack. Your power is last to go out of everything, but his soul, or if he still loves the sport, what his reasoning is, but I can't totally say he doesn't get it, but ultimately I'm going to do it anyways. Jake Ellenberger, for continuing to fight when you probably shouldn't when it comes to your health and all that. You called, reported that this morning Wanderlei Silva announced himself that he'd be fighting Rampage at a Bellator event in September, and if the fight between the two legends, does Bellator get it or not get it for booking this fight?
I just think, it's a tough one because just thinking about it, like, I just kind of mentioned it. Like, these are two fighters that just shouldn't really be fighting again, but they're going to continue fighting because that's just what they love to do. And of course, we can't really make their decisions for them. But a fourth fight when it comes to it, I guess. People always have mixed emotions because sometimes I'll look back and I'll be like, I'll see tweets that are people saying, "When's Rampage going to fight again? When's Vanderlei going to fight again?" And then it actually comes to the fight announcement, and I see more people saying this fight shouldn't be happening. So I never really know what people think. I'm trying to think about how I want to answer it. I guess it's gonna be fun. It could be fun. They're not they're not at all ever gonna be champions. They're not. I feel like they're just doing that for the money and for having fun and enjoying being fighters. And to close out now with the fourth fight, I feel like we could see a pretty cool knockout again. The Vanderlei is what? He's he's lost the last 2 fights. Has he lost every fight? Do you know? I thought he's lost the
He
last
hasn't
2.
fought for a very long time, so I'm not totally sure off the top of my head.
I was thinking about against Rampage, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah. It's 2-1 for Wanderlei, I believe.
Oh, it's 2-1 for him. Yeah, you're right. Okay, for some reason I thought it was 1-2. Um, it could be pretty. I mean, pretty cool. I guess they get it, but they shouldn't get it. I don't, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I got you. I mean, is this a fight that people should want to see? Maybe, but like, it's kind of weird. But it's a Bellator fight. It'll get some
Yeah, it's a
eyeballs, and
Bellator fight. That's exactly
Bellator
what it
needs
is.
eyeballs right now. Their viewership has not been the best since moving over to what's it called again?
It's Paramount. I don't even
Paramount
have
Network. Yeah,
Paramount.
yeah. And so,
More people in the United States had Spike than they do Paramount. I feel
huh?
like Paramount. It all depends on what channel you get, and I could be completely wrong, but I've checked on this television and I do not have Paramount TV, so I have no way of watching Bellator
That's interesting.
unless they replaced it with Spike. I'm not
Well,
really
that's what
sure
they
how it works.
did.
That is what they did. So
Yeah.
maybe I have it, but then again, I didn't have Spike on. I don't have Spike on this television behind me, or I didn't. I didn't have it at school, so maybe I don't know. Maybe I still don't have it, or maybe I have it
If you
now.
have
I have to
Spike, you
check.
should have Paramount. But if you didn't have Spike,
Hmm.
then you probably don't have it.
Well, then I guess
Um,
I'm wrong. For some reason, I thought there were two different networks. But then again, if you
it's just a rebranding. It's the same network. They just call it something
yeah,
different. And
that's like when ABC Family changed to the freeform or
I don't know.
freeform. I was going to say freelance freeform. They lost a lot of viewers from what I heard too. I think the rebranding process just isn't really the most beneficial in a sense. I feel like it's just people don't see Spike, and when I heard Spike, I thought I'm gonna watch Bar Rescue. I don't know if you did that, or I'm gonna watch Cops. Things that were like original on Spike, and then now it's called Paramount. And you're like, oh, that's not Spike. So
Take it all. I dig it. I'll watch it. Fun. Whatever. Bellator needs ratings. They'll probably get some with this. I think they get it. Let's just see if I have any more. No, I think that's probably it. Not tons has been going on in the world of MMA. I guess we could really quickly give our quick thoughts on the PFL 2 card going down, I guess,
ooh,
tomorrow. Will Brooks is fighting. He's fighting Luis Firmino in the main event. That should be pretty fun. I know people are excited to see the debut of what's her
Kayla
name?
Harrison.
Kayla Harrison, I know, has been hyped up. Ramsey Nijim and Brian Foster are fighting. I don't really have tons to say about it. Really, pretty much nothing. But if you have anything at all, go for it.
I would ramble about the card actually, just because I like it so much. Sean O'Connell's on the card.
Oh yeah,
Further
yep.
down, you've got Yusupov fighting Raheem Cleveland. Should be a pretty good fight. Maxim Grishin, he's been around for a while. He's a pretty tough and durable dude. Chris Wade's on the card. Chuck Tavares is on the card. Dan Spone is on the card. Brandon Halsey is fighting Smilio Rama. Should be a good fight. Escudero is fighting Jason Hine. Brian Foster's fighting Ramsey Ninja. There's a lot of like names that you see that are like, wow, like these guys still might have a little bit in them to be able to pull something off and look impressive. So Hani Marks is fighting Sean O'Connell, by the way. So Hani, of course, dates back a while. Vinny Magalhaes, he's on the card as well. So there's a lot of notable guys on the card, and then Will Brooks Firmino is the main event, which is a really solid fight. So honestly, I can't really complain. The card's pretty decent for being a PFL card, and I like how they've actually stacked them up because I remember back when it was World Series of Fighting, the cards weren't really terrific name value. These are like actually like wow, like I really want to watch and check out some of these fights in my opinion. Even though they may not be at the top of the game where they once were in Korea, these are fighters that still like it's not like a Chuck Liddell or a Tito Ortiz or Chael Sonnen who like came back after they had their heights and they were prestigious and now they look terrible. These are fighters that like have lost to decent competition but are still hanging in there and like actually are still getting victories. So I feel like this could be a pretty good card. I'll try to watch some of it. But then again, I prefer to do before the battle. I feel like than watch some of these fights. This is kind of my take, but I'm also I really like Tiago Tavares, so hoping he wins. Besides that, I think the card's just it's pretty good for what it is.
For PFL, it's a good card. I think it's stinky good, and I'll probably watch because we'll be doing before the battle after it anyway. So, last order of business on this show before we say goodbye to our loyal listeners, we have a couple dumb questions. Let me find them on Twitter. Bossman over at MMAsucker.com. Jeremy Brand on Twitter at JeremyBrand604. He says, if you could give yourself an MMA nickname, what would it be and why?
Huh. I've been told a few different things.
You could go and just go Wes the Riddle.
Wes the Riddle. I never thought about that. Just saying the Riddle. Um, I've had people say worldwide, as in World Wide Web, but it's Wes. Worldwide Wes Riddle.
Not
Um,
terrible.
and then yeah, exactly. And then I remember Brian Jeffries, old Flying Brian. He told me my nickname should be Hole in One because I play golf, so it should be Wes Hole in One Riddle. And then there's other words that rhyme with Riddle, but none of them sound good. So it's like Wes Diddle Riddle, Wes Fiddle Riddle. They just sound so dumb. So I feel like there's not a whole lot that works with mine, but um, Wes the Riddle would be is actually pretty clever. And I like the hole in one idea that Brian had a while ago, just because I like golf and um, getting a hole in one, just knock somebody out, make it quick, lights out. I don't know. That I guess either one. I don't know. I wouldn't. I don't want to choose it. I'd rather have people choose it because then if I choose it, people think it's dumb. If other people choose it, I'll think it's dumb, but I'll take it. So
I'd probably have to go with Mumble just because Garbrandt gave me that nickname, and when a UFC champion nicknames you, you kind of just have to stick with it. Plus, it
I
makes
remember
sense. I
that.
mean, when I'm not podcasting, I probably mumble a lot more than I should, and maybe even when I am podcasting, I've worked on that. It's been a struggle to project my voice so the masses can hear what I'm saying and understand what I'm saying. But yeah, I'd probably go with mumbles. There's no rhyme, but I mean, with my last name, there's a lot you can do with it. Bald and win. I don't know exactly anything off the top of my head, but I'm sure there's a lot that rhymes with bald and just win. I'm sure there's a lot of rhymes with that too. So, or you can rhyme my first name, Nick. You can go Nick the pick ball. That doesn't really make sense, but there's a lot you can do. If people think I'm a dick, well, you could go the Dick Nick Baldwin. I don't know. There's a lot you can do with my name and short name, short syllables, and yeah. But I'd probably just go with mumbles, even though there's no rhyme whatsoever. Doesn't always have to be a rhyme. Last dumb question comes from my good friend Josh Wolski. Follow him on Twitter at Josh Wolski. That is JoshWolske. He says, if you were a fighter, what would your walkout song be?
Oh, dang, that's a good question. There have been so many I've thought of. Yeah, I'll let you go first on this one. Do you have one off the top of your head?
No, I don't. What would be my walkout song? That's a good question, and one I'll never have to really come up with an answer because I'm never going to be a fighter. But
I've thought about it.
I don't have a favorite song. When I was growing up, I mean, I still am. I shouldn't say when I was because I'm not even 18. But when I was younger, I'd always have a favorite song. I don't anymore. I haven't had a favorite song for a while. It would keep on changing. Now I just like, I mean, certain music. Um, I would consider going with "Don't Stop Believing" by Journey. To be honest, I don't know. Like it's not my favorite song. I like it a lot, but just the idea, like "Don't Stop Believing," and I don't know. I think it'd be fun. It's a good song too.
That's a
Um,
good one.
I don't know. There's so many choices. It's so hard to say, but yeah, that's the one that I guess stands out for now.
Mm. I think that's a pretty good one. I think the song that I would definitely have.
Wes, thank you so much for stepping up as our guest co-host today. I appreciate it. The fans appreciate it. The listeners do, and it's great chatting with you for the first time in a minute. Remind everybody where they can find you on social media. And now that you're done school entirely, you keep saying you'll have more time to do MMA stuff. Plug away. Do MMA stuff. Plug away.
Cool. Well, you can first follow me on Twitter at all that MMA, where I do all my social media communication. You can also find I haven't all that MMA Instagram, which I haven't used a whole lot. I've been using a little bit more, or my personal Instagram. So look out for having me on the show. I've had a blast, kind of getting back into it, and would love to hopefully someday do it again. So thanks again, Nick, and thanks for everybody for watching.
Absolutely. You guys can find me on the Twitter at Nick Baldwin MMA. You can find all of my writing over at bloodyelbow.com. I'm not going to have much going on this weekend. I have had a very busy week. Of course, have high school graduation coming up in 5 days. On the Monday, I have the convocation on Wednesday. So 1 week today, I'll be officially done. High school out of my life forever. Moving on. I'm going camping this weekend though, so I will A, miss UFC Singapore, and B, won't be doing any coverage for it, and C, won't be doing anything else this weekend. And then it's really grad from there on out. The day after grad, I go on vacation, and then from there, I go to Vegas for International Fight Week. So I'm not going to be doing much coverage for Bloody Elbow in the next in the next week or so. I do need to write. I mean, I can't just not do anything. So somehow I'm going to find the time. It'll be tough, but I'll make it work. So just keep out your eye for anything else I got going on. I have some interviews coming out on this YouTube channel soon. I said that last week, and I know they should be up by now. And I'm sorry about that, but again, it's been busy. And but they'll be up soon. Darren Stewart, Montel Jackson, Chris Curtis, and there's one other. Curtis Blades, of course. How could I forget? I talked to them last week. They'll be up very, very soon. Thank you all for watching. We really appreciate you. Check out the MMA Circus on BloodyElbow.com, iTunes watching. We appreciate it. For Wes Riddle, I'm Nick Baldwin, and we're out.